right, welcome to Steeler Country. I am Tony Serino coming to you live from my Airbnb here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I am at Steelers training camp. Excited to talk to you guys today about what I've seen. I know we haven't done a podcast here for a week. It's been a weird week of Steeler practice. The weather has gotten in the way the last couple of days. Been a lot of rain here in the area, and that has caused the Steelers to move practice from Friday Night Lights at Latrobe Memorial Stadium all the way over to Southside, back in Pittsburgh itself, and then back out here into Latrobe Memorial. Didn't turn the fan off. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn this fan off so you don't get that background noise. Oh, the fun of doing a live show. All right. So as I said, weather kind of delaying things or kind of moving practice around. They've moved practice to 10 a.m. the last couple of days and in order to try and avoid the rain. For those of you who are actually attending camp in St. Vincent, you'll know that the parking lot area where we park has been destroyed by the rain. And so we have to park in these kind of side streets. Makes parking a real pain in the ass, but that is what it is. All right, well, let's get to kind of the practices themselves and what's been happening. Let's just start. We'll set a base here with the injuries of the guys who are not practicing, just so that if you're wondering as I go through position by position, why didn't you talk about player X? This is probably why. No injuries at the quarterback position thus far. Najee Harris is still down with that foot injury. He got his foot stepped on I think the first day with pads on. And Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada and Eddie Faulkner said, no, we can't have a Najee injury. Obviously, Najee being a real focal point of this offense. They have had him sit out pretty much every day. He did do individual drills today. Seems like this is the kind of injury where, if this were week one, if they were playing the Bengals this weekend, he would play for sure. I think there's no doubt about that. So, Najee sitting out right now. I don't know that we'll see him again. I certainly would not expect we'll see him in the preseason game. I might think you wouldn't see him again in training camp whatsoever. Mateo Durant, the running back, is also not practicing. That's tough for him because if he wanted any chance of making this team, obviously he's going to have to practice because he came in as an undrafted free agent. And the other part that's tough for him is that Jaylen Warren has been getting more and more reps now with Durant's injury, and Jaylen Warren is playing really well, as we'll talk about. So tough injury for Durant. Derek Watt also not practicing right now, which means less reps for special teams. I don't know how Derek Watt is. Derek Watt's a core special teamer, so that injury isn't really that significant. Let's be honest. At wide receiver, two big injuries to talk about here. Deontay has a hip flexor, so he hasn't practiced. He practiced for a couple days after he signed the contract, then went down with his injury. Hasn't practiced since then. Seems fine on the sideline again. I think this is another one where why risk major injury to a guy like this? He's a veteran. What he needs to do is go work on the jugs machine, right? And that's, just act like it's 3rd and 5 and go to the jugs machine. Chase Claypool didn't practice today. I don't know why. They didn't ask Tomlin about this during training camp. Or during this press conference. So not entirely sure why Claypool didn't practice today, but it did mean a lot more reps for my dog, George Pickens, who made good use of those reps, as we'll talk about. Tight end Freiermuth is back. He looks fine. He said he's trying to work the rust off. He had a long time between when he, that first couple of days where he practiced, and then he had this injury, this lingering muscle tissue issue in his hamstring. So, but he went a while without practicing. So I think, he's trying to work himself back into up to speed. Zach Gentry is not practicing right now, which is meaning more reps for Connor Hayward, who is also making good use of that. The biggest injury I think right now is on the offensive line, and that is the injury to Kevin Dotson. Kevin Dotson has not practiced the last couple of days. I don't know that he's going to be back anytime soon, right? When you see these players kind of working their way back, generally as they get closer and closer, you'll see them do more and more when it comes to just kind of running on the sideline, keeping themselves in shape that way, or going through individual drills. Kevin Dotson doing neither. And that is really tough because when we talk about the one battle on this offensive line right now, it's at the left guard spot. It's Kevin Dotson versus Kendrick Green. And I thought Kevin Dotson was winning that battle pretty handily, quite honestly. And so Dotson not practicing, gives Green all the first team reps. And it, look, the story's not over yet, right? We haven't even played a preseason game, but I think for me, the issue here with Dotson is if this is longer than a week-long injury, right? If this goes into preseason game number 2 or even preseason game number 3, he's just going to lose this battle just because he didn't get the reps. Even though I thought he was significantly better than Kendrick Green throughout camp thus far. So it's tough because this is the spot on the roster where I think there was the least certainty, right? Neither guy in Dotson or Kendrick Green has been great throughout. Certainly Kendrick Green has not. And Dotson, while he has that, he's a great pass blocker because PFF said he had a 96th grade or whatever it was. Like, let's not forget that was when Ben was quarterback and Ben got rid of the ball as fast as anybody. So, that was the one spot on the line where you had a question mark. And I worry that Kendrick Green is going to win that spot, not because he earned it, but because Dotson was out with injury. So we're going to need to monitor that one as we go. Over to the defensive side, Ogunjobi is back. Larry Ogunjobi is practicing fully, even in team drills, made his presence felt very, very quickly out there. Montravius Adams not practicing right now. He went down with what looks like a minor injury. And then Alualu is still not practicing whatsoever, which is pretty weird considering that, Tomlin said during that first press conference, he's dealing with knee swelling from rehab, from rehabbing too hard. And we're like 2 weeks into camp, almost 3 weeks into camp, and no sign of Alualu whatsoever. So it's tough because, we know how good this defense is when he's the nose tackle, but if he can't practice, and he's 35 years old, I mean, maybe the Steelers are just kind of shutting him down and letting him go in the regular season because, obviously at 35, these things are, the kind of the swelling and everything is going to happen. I've always worried with this defensive line, how much they're putting on Alualu's plate or how much of this defensive line is going to kind of go with Alualu, considering how important he's been at the nose when it comes to this run defense. Alex Highsmith not practicing right now. He was actually having a pretty tough camp so far, and he's really struggled against Dan Moore, which probably says more about Dan Moore. But I do think there's some stuff with Highsmith when we talk about that kind of speed to power that he needs to work on. Haven't seen that thus far from him. Dan Moore, as I talked about in the last show, Dan Moore has traditionally struggled against guys who are those kind of speed rushers. He's been much better in that way in this camp. So with Highsmith out, that's meant more reps for guys like Jannard Avery, Derek Tuska, Delonte Scott, who we'll talk about. It's made that edge rushing position probably more exciting than maybe it should be. Right? I mean, this is going to be all about TJ and Highsmith, but this has meant that kind of back end of the roster is getting more reps. And it's providing reps for guys like Delonte Scott who are showing out and making the coach staff have to think about who they're going to keep at this position when we cut down to 53. At linebacker, Ulysses Gilbert got cut, and the Steelers signed, I believe, another edge rusher in his place. And then Marcus Allen's been down with injury. Linebacker is a really interesting one. We'll talk about that. I don't think it has anything to do with depth, though. I think the thing with linebacker is there's a real battle for who's going to start at linebacker. And Robert Spillane is in that battle, and it's kind of crazy. So we'll talk about that. Levi Wallace is back at corner. He's interesting. We'll talk about him when we get to corner because I think he's in a battle right now for kind of proving that Cam Sutton should go to the slot when we get into those nickel situations. Minka's back. Carl Joseph are back. Carl Joseph playing well out there, getting some good first team reps, or not first team, second team reps, I should say, and maybe providing us once again another position battle on the back end of that room. But that's where the Steelers are right now from an injury perspective. So let's go over and start talking about each position. We'll start, of course, with the position that everyone's talking about all over Twitter every single day. Is Mason QB1? Is it Mitch? Should Kenny get some first team reps? It's and all anybody wants to talk about. As I said on the last show, there's no quarterback battle until someone other than Mitch takes first team reps. And while, yes, there have been 2 days now where they split first team reps, Mitch and Mason, I'm still just, there's not a battle. I'm sorry. Like Mitch takes almost every, at this point, I think it would be like a 90-10 split if you were breaking them down rep by rep. And I'm sure, by the way, Kazor is going to do that over on Steeler Depot. So take a look when he does the rep count when it comes to first and second team. Mitch Trubisky is going to be your starter. No doubt about it. The only concern I have about it at this point, and again, the process is not over. As I said, no preseason games have been played. So this could certainly still be a fluid situation. But as I went into this camp, to me, it was not so much important as who won the battle, but why. Meaning that you want to not just see like the best quarterback win, but you want to see there be a real battle where both guys are pushing themselves. And there's, you're not just picking someone by default, right? You're not just picking someone because it's like, well, who else are we going to go with? Well, I wouldn't say that Tomlin's picking Trubisky because it's like, well, who else are we going to go with? The fact that this really hasn't been a true battle, the fact that we haven't seen anyone, even if it's Mason, right? As much as I haven't loved Mason Rudolph throughout his career, I thought he's had some days where it's like, all right, give this guy some first team reps just to see, like, if he can do that against the first team, like maybe we have a battle here. Doesn't seem like Tomlin's interested in that, at least this far through camp. Maybe that'll change as we get into preseason and whatnot. But Mitch is QB1. Mason continues to do what he's been doing. If you've been listening to people out there who are telling you Mason's QB1 and Mason's the best quarterback out here, and he hasn't really done anything thus far to kind of disprove that. I will say though, and I think, Nick Farabaugh put this the right way when he tweeted that Mitch has the highest highs and Mason is the most consistent. I just, for me, the highs for Mason are, they're not that high. I mean, it's typical Mason stuff. He gets his reputation for checkdowns and whatnot, and there's certainly a lot of that. I just think, as I've said before, I mean, I'll be a broken record on him. He's the most decisive with the football. He's the most comfortable back there. As I've said before, if the Steelers desire to be what they were last year, which is an offense that's very quick with the ball, getting the ball out and getting them, and trying to make the safer throws and not try to risk interception, they're going to go with Mason at this point. I know that kind of sounds crazy because Mason's got the reputation of being very turnover heavy throughout his career. He's not that guy this camp thus far. I think he threw his first interception yesterday. And that was day 13 of training camp. It took him 13 days to throw one interception. And he probably had some other plays that, PFF would call a turnover worthy play. But I wouldn't say that Mason's going out there looking like the bonehead that we've seen him be in the past. And so, yeah, Mason's been, I think it's been interesting to watch how he's kind of grown and developed into this quarterback who, I think you would be at this point, you would be really, really happy with Mason Rudolph as your backup quarterback, right? That's who I think Mason Rudolph has become at this point in his career. It's like, really, you're really safe with him as your backup quarterback because he's probably not going to screw things up for you. But the storyline today, training camp, was Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett had a wow day. And this has been a progression for him over time. You go back to those first 3 days of camp. Obviously, as I said at the time, Kenny Pickett was a disaster days 1 through 3 of training camp. And then I thought a light bulb kind of went on for him that first Saturday of camp. He had the nice ball and 7 shots. And while he didn't have a great day overall that day, I just felt like he was getting a little bit more comfortable, and it wasn't the disaster that we had seen in days prior. There's been this progression, though, with him where it just felt like he's getting more and more comfortable. And it did feel like throughout this week that he was going to have a day like this was coming. He was making too many good throws in between still some Kenny, what are you doing type plays. It just felt like, boy, he's starting to put it more and more together. Eventually, he is going to have a day where he looks like QB1. And today was that day. I thought he was super decisive with the football today. Saw the field really well. Hit some guys that were just, wide ass open. And I thought the thing that impressed me today most about him is that he made some throws that I didn't think he was capable of making physically. When you talk about Kenny Pickett, people talk about, they talk about the hand size thing, which I think I've always thought was very, very silly. Right. But the other thing they go to is, well, what about the arm strength? The arm strength of Kenny Pickett is an issue. I thought today he made a throw on the run. Now it was a play he probably should have been sacked, right? Kenny still is holding on to the ball too long at times, right? The typical rookie thing, right? Where you hold on to the ball too long, you get sacked. But regardless, he kind of scrambled out of the play and tried to make something happen after the fact. And he made a throw across his body. He's rolling out to his left, made a throw across his body, and it was 20, 30 yards downfield to Steven Sims and put it right on the money. Right into Steven Sims' hands for a beautiful catch. Now, obviously, Tomlin got on him because, hey, Kenny, you got to get the ball out of there quickly. But I thought, forget about that, right? Look, his pocket presence, I think, will get better over time as far as when he gets more comfortable with what he's seeing defensively and knowing where he wants to go with the ball. Pre-snap read type of thing will allow him to get rid of the ball more quickly. But that throw he made going on the side, I didn't think that was a throw he was capable of making at an NFL level. And the fact that he made that throw out there today, I thought was really, really impressive. I thought he had a very good day. And this came off of a day, if you read the reports from yesterday, he had 2 interceptions yesterday. I thought the 2 interceptions he threw yesterday, though, again, I want to be more kind of, process oriented here than results oriented, right? There were 2 interceptions, but were they really bad throws? The one interception he threw was James Pierre made a diving interception on out route that was a spectacular defensive play. And the other one, Kenny kind of tried to fit the ball in between 2 defenders, and the defender kind of got a hand on it as it went into the receiver's hands, and the other guy picked it off. I just felt like neither of those throws I felt like were, any kind of worry for me. If quite honestly, like if this were a true quarterback battle, days like today would make you think that Kenny's going to enter himself into this picture. And I think the thing that I've been most impressed with Kenny is how kind of quickly he's picking things up, right? When you talk about a player who's as veteran as he is, right? We're talking about a 5-year college starter, a guy who played, 5th year in college. they talked about how NFL ready he was going to be. I poo-pooed that at the time, and I said, look, NFL ready is not really a thing. You talk about these NFL ready quarterbacks, and they come in, and the game is completely different, and that's a lot. That's very true, right? You talk about the ACC defenses that Kenny was facing. The only one that you could even say is even remotely close to anything he's going to play at the NFL level is that Clemson game. And while he played well in that game, that's one game. It's a one-game sample size. But I have been really impressed with how Kenny has evolved and how comfortable he's gotten, how quickly he's gotten comfortable. And I think it does kind of bode well for his future development. I mean, if caveat here, we're only 2 weeks in, and obviously he could plateau at any point, but we haven't seen him start to plateau yet. And you have kind of seen a natural progression of getting better and better, and it's happening quickly. Right? We talk about 2 weeks ago, Kenny Pickett was mocked all over Twitter for the throw he made at the end of practice number 1, and he was, and people were writing about him and the rookie struggles or the disaster that he was. No one's writing those articles anymore. I mean, whoever it was, that NFL Network reporter the other day who wrote the tweet where they said, like, Sam Howell's like the most accurate quarterback of all time, and Kenny Pickett's struggling at camp. It's like, I'm sorry, she's not at camp. Like, she's not here. She's not watching Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is not struggling right now. No one's going to write right now that Kenny Pickett is struggling. Kenny Pickett is getting better on a day-to-day basis. Is he is it worthy of him starting on this team right now? Is it, he's going to be, no, it's none of that. But the idea that Kenny Pickett is the same guy that he was days 1 through 3, I think is just a very silly concept. And I would not pay attention to that. Kenny Pickett is getting better day by day. And if you're a believer that Kenny Pickett can end up being an elite quarterback, I think the last week should be, you should be very pleased with what's happened, the developments that have happened over the last week or two with Kenny and his game. So that's where we are at the quarterback spot. I would expect that when we get into Saturday's game, it's going to be Mitch with the 1s, Mason with the 2s, and Kenny with the 3s. And the thing I'll say about Kenny, about that game, is I do wonder with Kenny, we talk about the comfortability he's got at camp right now. My wonder with him going into this game is, okay, so if you just chalk up those first 3 days of camp of like, all right, pre-camp jitters, you know what I mean? Like his first training camp practices. He was kind of, the moment might have got too big for him in those first 3 days, but he's kind of settled down pretty quickly. Does the same thing happen in a preseason game, right? Does he kind of revert back to who he was those first couple days? Does the bright lights of Hines or Acrisure, whatever we're calling it now, does that get to him, right? The first real NFL defense he's going to face in a real setting. We'll see. Again, I'm not too worried about it because, as I said, like the progression that he's made so quickly, I'm excited to see him, especially if he's going to go out there against the 3s. I would expect that the Kenny Pickett that I'm watching these last couple days, as long as he doesn't regress in any big way, I would expect that Kenny Pickett going up against the Seahawks third team defense should do really well for himself. And the other thing is that this wide receiver core, which we'll get to in a second, actually let's just go right over to the wide receiver core, because the one thing about this wide receiver core is that in years past, you could talk about, the third string quarterback has it the worst because the receivers he's playing with can't get open, and yet the offensive line can't block for him, and yet the wide receiver group is not going to be that's not going to be an excuse for Kenny. This wide receiver group is while it may not be like the most top heavy group in the league, right? I mean, I wouldn't put this group up amongst like the best receiving groups in the league. I would say, man, it is so deep though that the Steelers are going to have a really tough time cutting this room down to 5 or 6 or whatever it's going to be. There are some, I mean, you talk about like Anthony Miller, Miles Boykin, Gunnar Olszewski, Steven Sims, Tyler Vaughn. The back end of these of this wide receiver room are making plays on a day-to-day basis. They're getting open. They're giving Kenny good throwing lanes. So, man, it's going to be interesting to watch Kenny out there with those guys if it's the 3s, especially if it's against the 3s on Seattle's defense. I would say I don't want to set Kenny up for failure here, but I have high expectations for what he's going to be able to do. Really, I have high expectations, quite honestly, for all 3 quarterbacks. Because for for Mitch, while he's struggled, he's taken all first team reps. We talk about how good, when I get to this defense, and I start, once again, just gushing over how good this defense is. It's like, all right, well, when Mitch is not going up against the Steelers' first team defense, right? It should be a downgrade, right? Seattle's defense not as good as the Steelers' first team defense, and so he should have it pretty easy out there, or at least it's like in baseball, right? And you put the donut on your bat, make things a little heavier for you, so when you're swinging the bat, it feels light. Hopefully, it feels that way for Mitch when he's going up against Seattle. That's what I want to see. So I expect big things out of all 3 of these guys, just because, again, the consistency of Mason, the progression we've seen of Kenny, and the fact that Mitch is going up against the Steelers defense every day, and it should feel a little easier for him to find open receivers against I guess even if it doesn't include Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Cam Sutton, Miles Jack, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Well, the wide receiver room, look, we'll start right at the top. I mean, George Pickens is spectacular. I talked about this the last two shows. I said he's the best offensive player the Steelers have when he's out there. And I am going to, I mean, oh my goodness. Mark Caboli said on Pat McAfee's show today that he would be shocked if George Pickens is not at least a good player. Now, forget about great, all the, just he's going to be a good player. He has to be a good player based on what we're seeing out there. Because this guy, when Tomlin talks about, what's his two sayings, right? You want to make the routine look routine, right? You want to make the routine plays routinely. He makes the routine plays routinely. He also makes the spectacular look routine. And it is a level of consistency out of a rookie that you just shouldn't see. I mean, we're talking about every single day of camp. And it's actually gotten to the point where I think even the quarterbacks have noticed it, where it's like, if George is in a one-on-one spot, I'm just going to go give it to him because George is going to go get it. That's what happened to Mason in the 2-minute drill. They had a 2-minute drill to end camp today. Mason Rudolph got some first-team reps. He did a little check down thing, a couple little check downs, ding, ding. And I'm like, all right, Mason, come on, man. Just please give me a ball down the field. Like just one time, Mason, please. And he did. He uncorked a deep ball to Pickens down the sideline, covered by Levi Wallace. And Pickens made it look easy. Plucked the ball out of the air easily, 40, 50-yard gain, whatever it was. I think it was a touchdown. They marked him down at the 1, I think only because they wanted the drill to keep going. So now they're at the 1-yard line. Mason's going to throw up a fade route to Pickens, who's covered by Levi Wallace. As we know, Levi Wallace is a pretty physical corner. Likes to mix it up. Mason, I thought, was late on the throw itself, which allowed Levi to kind of get a good jump on the ball. It didn't matter. Pickens made a play where he kind of tipped the ball. So it's Levi's like all up in him, right? Levi's got his hand right in his face. So Pickens kind of tips the ball to himself. And then as they're both falling to the ground, there's pictures of this on Twitter. You can see it. Hopefully someone got a video of it because everyone videos at camp now. Hopefully someone got a video of it. The catch was spectacular. I mean, the players were going, you would have thought like the Steelers won the Super Bowl based on the way the players were reacting, which we got to talk about that because this offense and defense loves to chirp with one another every time they make a play now. There's going to be more fights coming up. I guarantee you that. Crowd was going nuts. I mean, it was a spectacular play. And so, to kind of piggyback off of what Caboli is saying about Pickens, like if George Pickens isn't a good receiver, what is the point of training camp? Like I'm watching this guy go out there every single day and just make play after play. And whether it's the deep routes, like I talked about, the two spectacular catches he made in that 2-minute drill, or just a simple slant route, just a simple stop route, right? And a little backside dig. Like he makes everything. If he's not at least a good player, why do we do training camp? I mean, the thing I just have to hope here when it comes to George Pickens is stay healthy, make sure he knows the play so that there aren't only certain formations or certain looks that Canada and make sure he stays on the coach's good side and whatnot. And good things are going to happen for this guy, man. I mean, what a pickup the Steelers got in George Pickens. He is, he's spectacular. There's no other way to put it. The other thing I'll say about the wide receiver position is I continue to be impressed with Calvin Austin, and not just in he's a really fast guy type of way, which is obviously, that's his calling card, right? Is his speed. But I've been really impressed with his ability to win routes down the field. And, he doesn't just have to be kind of a gadget, get him on a little wide receiver screen and hope to find him in space, or, get him on a little misdirection or the end arounds and stuff that you're going to see him in, which they've run a million of those in camp. I've been impressed with his ability to win down the field and to win against different kind of coverages. He's another player who, when I think about this offense and what this offense could end up being, I don't know this. Look, I don't think this offense is going to be like a top 10 unit, right? I mean, I like Najee Harris a lot. I like the skill position players. I like Pat Freiermuth. I like George Pickens a lot, as I said. Deontay. I like Calvin Austin. I do think that right now the quarterback situation, when it comes to Mitch, I don't think he's going to be capable of I think the Steelers are kind of limited by what they're going to have on the offensive line and what they're going to have at quarterback. But I could see, if you listen to me on AFC North Talk, I made a big deal last year about the Bengals offense and how, while everybody saw it as this they're an elite offense and, they're capable of they were capable of a lot. But what they actually were was a kind of feast or famine type of offense that lived on big plays. And if you really broke it down, it was like either they're going to hit a big play on a drive or they're going to stall out. And that was pretty much the entirety. You saw that in the Super Bowl, right? What happened in the Super Bowl? Well, they hit a deep one to Jamar Chase. They hit a deep one to T. Higgins. They hit another deep one to Jamar Chase. And other than that, they didn't do a whole lot else, right? I mean, there was 3 and out and a lot of nonsense. I think the Steelers could be, maybe not that good. I mean, look, I'm not saying George Pickens is going to go out here and beat Jamar Chase, right? I don't think the Steelers have a quarterback as good as Burrow. So maybe they'll be like, the junior version of that. But I think that is, if we're talking about what could this offense look like, I think this team is going to be very capable of the big play. I just don't know that they're going to be capable of sustaining drives. And that's kind of the worry for me. But obviously this team was incapable of the big play a year ago. So it's a big upgrade here. The other thing to talk about at the wide receiver position is the back end of the roster. I would have told you a couple days ago that I thought Anthony Miller had this in the bag when it came to that 6th wide receiver spot. I think they're going to keep 6, by the way. And I thought Anthony Miller would have been that guy. But I'll tell you what, Miles Boykin has really come on strong these past couple days and kind of made a name for himself now. I think when you look at this group, obviously we know who the top 4 are going to be, right? You've got Deontae, Claypool, Pickens, Austin. Those guys are all making the roster. They are surefire locks. I think Gunnar Olszewski is going to make the roster as well as a return guy. And don't rule out what he can do as a receiver. He's been out there first and second team, and he's been making plays as a slot receiver. I think he's going to be more involved in this offense than maybe you would have assumed for someone who really, kind of made a name for himself as an all-pro returner last year. I think he doesn't have a ton of catches to his name. I could see him being a part of this offense as well. But man, beyond that, so that's 5. So beyond that, you're going to keep 1 more. And I think that 1 more right now is between Miles Boykin and Anthony Miller. And boy, these two could not be different types of receivers, right? And Anthony Miller, I wouldn't call him undersized, right? But he's certainly built more like a slot receiver. And then you got Miles Boykin, who's kind of built like one of these, big, physical type receivers. Both guys have played well. Anthony Miller, by the way, so the nice thing about camp today, almost no one there. I mean, it was very, very sparse crowd at camp today. And I think it's, once again, it's the second time they moved camp to 10 a.m., late notice, that kind of thing. But I could, you could hear Tomlin, you could hear Canada, I could hear the offensive line coach. I could hear the tight end coach, and basically everything they were saying. Tomlin said to Anthony Miller during warmups today, he said, "Make a play, Anthony Miller, and I'll acknowledge you." And Anthony Miller, shouted something back. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but yeah, man, Tomlin calling out Anthony Miller, and I was kind of surprised by it because I thought Anthony Miller had a good camp thus far. But yeah, those two, I think that's a battle to watch as we get into the second team on Saturday. Who's making plays out there between Anthony Miller and Miles Boykin, because it does feel like the old Tomlin 2-dog 1-bone situation at wide receiver. And as I said, this is a room that's not only do I like the starters. I love George Pickens. I think Deontae, Deontae is one of the best route runners in the league, and I love the idea of moving Claypool to the slot. I think the back end of this room, right? You talk about Gunnar. I wouldn't rule out Gunnar as being a sneaky part of this offense. And then I think Anthony Miller, Miles Boykin. I mean, these are guys who, you can play in a pinch. I don't think this is going to be the kind of room where you got like Kobe Hamilton out there, starting for you or anything like that. Certainly not. I think this is going to be a really tough. Oh, and by the way, don't rule out Steven Sims. Steven Sims made a couple big catches today. He was the one who caught the ad lib that Kenny had on the rollout that I talked about, and he also had the touchdown, the nice post route touchdown that Kenny had in the 2-minute drill. By the way, Kenny Pickett's 2-minute drill went like this: 2 plays. It was he saw there was a broken coverage to the running back on the flat, hit him, and Kenny saw it and hit it immediately. And that was Jalen Warren, who went for he went for like 40 yards, and then the second play, bang, Steven Sims, easy wide open touchdown for Kenny. So did a really good job in the 2-minute. Let's go back over to running back here. I don't want to skip this group, because this, while there has been no Najee Harris thus far, it has led to once again like a sneaky interesting battle here, because no Jeremy McNichols. I thought McNichols could beat out Benny Snell for that spot. He got injured. That's not going to happen. They signed Master Teague. I don't love Master Teague. So to me, it was like, all right, well, we're just going to end up with another year of Najee backed up by Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland. Not the end of the world as long as Najee stays healthy. If Najee's healthy, I'm fine with it. But if Najee goes down, boy, disaster. And that's still going to be the case. But Jaylen Warren, the running back out of Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State, I should say, undrafted, just one of these guys who every single day, once again, another player who I think if this were if this were like, every other day, or, like once a day he's making a play here and there, I don't think we're talking about this at all. Benny Snell's done enough. Anthony McFarland's done enough that these two guys should easily win these jobs. I mean, I think, Benny Snell is kind of topped out for what he's going to be. Again, he's not going to be he's not quick, he's not agile, but he's just kind of a push the pile forward type of player. He's gotten better in the passing game. He's obviously a core special teamer on this team, which is what's going to keep him on this roster. He's a player that's, a veteran now that Tomlin can trust. Anthony McFarland's gotten a lot better, I thought, in this camp as far as his vision and his decisiveness. If you go back and watch Anthony McFarland a couple of years ago when he, the last time we actually saw him out there, because he didn't play because of injury last year, the big problem with McFarland was that it felt like he was moving like a million miles faster than the game was, because his feet were just, a million miles a minute. He had no idea where to go. Do I go here, there? Everything, it feels like the game is kind of slowed down for him. He's much more decisive. And of course, that is bringing out the athleticism that we know he has, right? The exciting part about McFarland is that he represents something the Steelers really haven't had in a long time at the running back position, which is a game breaker. And I thought McFarland now, with the game kind of slowing down for him, with him being more decisive, him kind of seeing things better, it's brought out more of that athleticism from him. We've seen some big runs from him in camp thus far. And I think as a receiver as well, I thought he's gotten better. And he's still not a great receiver out of the backfield, but once again, it's one of those parts of his game that he's evolved. I think he's making a strong case for himself. But then there's Jaylen Warren, who's a do-it-all type back. I mean, I talked about this on the last show. He was dominant in backs on backers the first day of pads. He was certainly the star. And I think Tomlin called him out for that. But every day, he rips off these huge runs. Again, it's not first team stuff. It's second and third team stuff. Certainly there's, you got to bring that up. You talk about Jaylen Warren, because yes, he is going up against lesser opponents, but still, I mean, the guy is making play after play, both as a runner and as a receiver. He's going to make things so tough. I can't wait to watch. He's another player when it comes to Saturday night. I can't wait to watch, because I want to see if this translates from the practice field onto the playing field. If it does, it is going to make the Steelers' job really difficult when it comes to cutting this room down. But I know they don't want to cut Benny, because Benny's such a good special teamer. And I think McFarland's had good enough camp. And then you talk about what he represents is that, the game breaker, as I talked about. Boy, I don't know what you do with Jaylen Warren. Maybe you try to stash him on the practice squad. We shall see. I don't know that he will get there. We'll see what happens on Saturday. All right. Over to, actually, let's skip tight end for a second. Let's go to the offensive line. As I said, the big storyline in the offensive line thus far is the fact that Kevin Dotson hasn't practiced in a while and doesn't look like he's going to be practicing anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope he comes back quickly, because I really do think that left guard spot was his to lose. I know it was a battle between him and Green. They were like splitting every other rep. I mean, they, talk about, the kind of, Mason gets like half of the reps on one day. No. I mean, like every other rep, it was Dotson and Green. I mean, even when they would do individuals, like they would do them in tandem. It was a real battle. And I thought Dotson was winning it. I think the problem with Kendrick Green is that you just took the Kendrick Green experience at center and you moved it to guard. I still think he loses at the point of attack, too often. He's driven into the backfield. I don't think Kendrick Green is a starting caliber player, whether you put him at center or guard. And look, I wouldn't even say that. I think I said this last time, right? The real loser in this situation is not Kevin Dotson or Kendrick Green. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because as I said before, like I didn't think Kevin Dotson was a starter caliber player either. But I thought he was better. And again, you're still talking about a young guy. I mean, I think he's in year 3 or 4 at this point. I mean, there's still room for him to kind of grow and develop. And these missed reps are really going to hurt in that spot. The rest of the offensive line, I thought has gotten better as camp has gone on. The first couple of days were really rough when it came to those run periods. And I think it's gotten better as we go. Look, I think if your expectation on the offensive line is that we're going to see some kind of night and day improvement, especially when it comes to the running game, I think you have to lower your expectations. I think if you want to call this team, let's call them like the 25th or 30th best offensive line in the league last year. I mean, I think you're going to see improvement by like 5, I think we're going to go from like 25th to 20th or 30th to 25th, however you want to, wherever you want to rank them from last year. Like, I just don't think we're going to see a massive improvement in the offensive line. I do think, though, the Steelers have really found something in Dan Moore. And here's another guy, like you talk about George Pickens, where it's like, look, if this doesn't translate, then what are we doing at training camp? Because Dan Moore has been really, really good. I mean, that side of the field, that left side, he has kind of shut down everybody who he's been against. Now, it's not TJ. He's not going up against TJ Watt. That's Chooks, who has really struggled throughout camp. But Dan Moore has gotten, so much better this year in his back pedal, so much more natural out there. He's another, once again, chalk him up as a player who I'm really excited to watch on Saturday because, you just want to see these things. The thing you're watching on the practice field, you want to see that translate into the game situations. And while it is just a preseason game, it matters. So it would be a big get for this team. I know that, there's a lot of Steeler fans out there who really want to see this team kind of, we see this team has Najee Harris. We know the talent that Najee has, and we want them to be able to unleash that. I don't know that we're going to get there all the way. I don't think Najee is going to be averaging like 5 yards a carry. I don't think we're going to be talking about their best run offense in the league. But if they can nail the left tackle position, I think they'll be okay. I think that's certainly something you can build around as we go, right? Think about the Bengals and where they were 2 years ago, right? They just needed to identify, okay, which of these guys on this offensive line can we build around? Now, it turned out that there was only one, and that was Jonah Williams, right? And the rest of them, they were like, well, see you, buddies. But, even if that's the case for the Steelers, that's fine. Just figure out. I think James Daniels might be okay. I want to see what he does in a, in a live setting. But I think to this point, Dan Moore's been the best offensive lineman the Steelers have. Okay. That's the offensive line. Tight end, I think the big story for tight end thus far has been Connor Hayward. So as I talked about, Freiermuth hasn't practiced for a while. I think he's going to take a little bit of time to get back up to speed. The other guy, Sternberger, has had a nice day maybe a week ago. But other than that, he hasn't done much. Rader's a good blocker, but Connor Hayward, as I said before, represents something different at this. He is such an interesting player because he just doesn't fit the mold of a tight end. He doesn't look like a tight end whatsoever. He's short for the position. He's not built like a tight end. But they're not really using him in that way. I mean, I don't think this team desires to, line up him in line and say, okay, you're gonna stretch block on this zone play. I mean, I just don't think that's what they want him to do. I think they want to put him in the slot, move him around, and kind of use him as an X factor. And that's certainly what you've seen from him. And he's getting a lot of first and second team reps, by the way. Connor Hayward is someone who I didn't expect. I didn't even expect he would make the roster. Now he's much like Gunner, where I'm like, don't rule out that you are going to see a lot of Connor Hayward in this offense this season, especially as we go, right? I mean, he's a rookie, so it's going to take this coaching staff, I think, a bunch of time to feel ready to work him in. But like, they like him a lot. They like him a lot. And I see why. Again, you can do a lot of interesting things with him, especially when it comes to splitting him out wide and using him in the slot. He's an interesting player, man. He's an interesting player. Okay, over to the defense. On the defensive line, I think the storyline here is the Marvin Layne, the rookie out of Texas A&M. I'm kind of surprised I'm even saying this because I really did not expect that this early on in his career we'd be talking about him as someone who could get big minutes, but he has really showed out. I know this is a defensive line that we know who the starters are going to be, right? We know that when it comes to a pass rush situation and when they take the nose tackle off the field, we know it's going to be Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi on the majority of snaps. We know that's going to be the case. Obviously, Chris Wormley is going to probably be the first guy off the bench because he's been here for a while. He had 6-8 sacks last year, so he's a pretty dependable player. And they drafted Isaiah Loudermilk a year ago, and I thought he's getting better. He was someone who kind of came on at the end of last season, and I think in this camp, kind of showing once again that growth and maturity that you expect out of a second-year player. But man, Marvin Layne is really making a case for himself. He had a couple big days of camp where he was so disruptive in the middle of that defense, especially as a pass rusher. I expected, he's a guy who had to put on a bunch of weight. I think he went from 270 to 300. You expect, okay, well, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get used to that, to playing at that weight, right? And this might be, red shirt type year for him, right? Not the end of the world. There's a third round pick. As we talked about, like they have Ogunjobi. We know it's not like this team's relying on him to be an every down starter, but he's certainly making a strong case for himself to be involved in this defensive line. And it does take the Steelers on the defensive line. When you talk about Ogunjobi in this defensive line and adding Leal, and of course the improvements to Loudermilk, it does take, what was probably the biggest weakness of this team a year ago, which was that defensive line. And boy, outside of Cam Hayward, it was just like a disaster. I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a massive strength this season, but I don't think I don't think about this defensive line today and really have the same worries I had a year ago. I think certainly in the passing game, they're going to be as disruptive as ever with Ogunjobi. There might still be some concerns in the run game, but nothing like we saw a year ago. And I think Leal's done an absolutely fantastic job on this defensive line. All right, let's go on to the edge rusher, because I talked about this before. No Highsmith has meant, well, first of all, I'll get this out of the way. TJ Watt is spectacular. TJ Watt is an absolute menace. And whoever it was that asked Tomlin on the first couple of days of camp, like, do you ask TJ to tone it down so that the offense can get some plays in? Like, that was a low-key good question, because while it might have seemed stupid at the time and Tomlin dismissed it, the plays when TJ's out there are much more fair. Or excuse me, when TJ's not out there, I should say, it's much more fair, because when TJ's out there, he wrecks everything he's doing. He is destroying. On a play-to-play basis, Devin Chuk's Okorafor, another guy who take donut off the bat on Saturday. When okay, I don't have to go against TJ anymore. Oh, okay, thank you very much. TJ is incredible. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Everybody knows TJ is incredible. We're here to talk about the rest of that room. Highsmith's going to be your starter for sure. Behind that, I think Jannard Avery is outside linebacker 3. Where it gets interesting is outside linebacker 4. It's a battle between Tuska and, at this point, I think Delonte Scott has really emerged as outside linebacker 4. Hopefully outside linebacker 4 doesn't matter, right? And this is more of a decision for Danny Smith than it is for Terrell Austin and that defensive staff to decide. Because at the end of the day, if TJ stays healthy and if Highsmith stays healthy, this shouldn't matter. But I think it is going to be an interesting. It's made for kind of an interesting battle here at camp between Tuska. Tuska right now is getting the first team reps, so he's playing in place of Highsmith, which kind of tells you where the coaching staff feels about him. But I think Scott is making more plays. He's been very, very disruptive both in the passing game and in the running game. And I want to see, as we, there's only one more. I'm only here for one more day of camp, so I'm here tomorrow, and then we're done. We're here on Saturday. But much like every position battle, one day it's Tuska, the next day it's Scott, and that's what you have to see going forward. Is can Delonte Scott do enough to prove to this coaching staff that, hey, give me some reps there? Because once he starts building his way up this roster, up this depth chart, starts making plays there, I think that's when he's going to kind of solidify, like, I can be outside linebacker 4, trust me with this, or potentially they keep 5, right? The interesting thing about the edge rushers is they usually keep 9 between the edge rushers and the inside linebackers, and boy, they're going to have a tough decision, because this linebacking crew has been this has been an interesting battle. Now, what I want to talk about here before we get to the back end of the roster, there's a battle here that is absolutely going to matter when it comes to a down-to-down basis for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that is the battle between Devin Bush and Robert Spillane. Not something I certainly did not expect to be saying when I first got here in Latrobe a couple weeks back. I thought one of the weirdest things about training camp early on was, why in the world are they doing this whole rotation between Miles Jack, Devin Bush, and Robert Spillane? Why is that a rotation? That should not be. There's no. They were running plays where Miles Jack would come off the field, and it was Devin Bush and Robert Spillane on the field together. It has become very clear to me why they're doing that. And that is because Robert Spillane is in a position battle with Devin Bush. Devin Bush may not be the starter opening day. Now, Miles Jack has nothing to worry about. He will be. Miles Jack has been very, very, as advertised. You talk about a player came in from Jacksonville who was so good there for so many years. Obviously, he had a down year a year ago, but you put him on this defense and you let him go, and it's it is exactly what you imagine. He is stout in the running game. So instinctive there. But then as a pass defender, he's still got that athleticism to go sideline to sideline to hang with the tight ends, to hang with the running backs out of the backfield. I it's another one like George Pickens, right? Like if Miles Jack isn't good this year, what are we doing at training camp? Like, why does this matter? Now Devin Bush, on the other hand, and Robert Spillane are really, it's a Rorschach test. Like, I think you could make arguments every single day that one guy won the battle and not be wrong, because it's been really, really close. Now, the fact that it's been close is not a good thing for Devin, because as we all know, Devin Bush is a better player than Robert Spillane, right? He should be on the Miles Jack level, where there's just no doubt, right? You're like, oh, we're putting Miles and Devin together, and this is going to be, they're going to make beautiful music together. That certainly has not been the case, and it's been much more the case that, to me, like, okay, once again, Rorschach test, right? You could make arguments that Devin's having good days out there, but I think Robert Spillane has been the better player. Wes Euler said this on Locked On Steelers, I think it was a week ago. He said, look, the problem with Devin is I just need to see him out there. I need to feel his presence, right? I just need to feel him on a down-to-down basis. And if we're just kind of marking down plays where it's like, okay, wow, that was a wow Devin play versus a wow Robert play, Robert Spillane is making more plays. I think on a play-to-play basis, I think Robert Spillane has been the better player throughout this training camp. And that's a shocker. Now, I will say this is not the case where both guys are bad, and so Robert's making less bad plays. Robert's play has been pretty good for himself. I think one-on-one drills aren't necessarily the best indicator of a player's success, because you're kind of defending air a lot of the time, right? Or at least you're running to air, I should say, as the runner, right? You can run past the linebacker where a safety should be, but there won't be because it's a one-on-one drill. But those are the reps Devin, those reps, to me, it feels like when you're the more athletic player, and Devin Bush certainly is, he should be winning those battles. He should be winning those reps. And to me, Robert Spillane was winning far more of those reps. I mean, I know we all have this image in our mind of like Robert Spillane can't cover, but man, I actually think Robert Spillane's made more plays. I should have done a better job of keeping track of this, actually putting it on paper. Because certainly I wouldn't say that Devin hasn't made plays here, but I've noticed Robert Spillane more. Certainly he made the more spectacular of the two. We're just talking about a one play sample size. He had a beautiful interception against Trubisky with the ones on, I think it was the second day with pads. Incredible interception by Spillane. And I just haven't said that about Devin. Again, Devin's made some nice plays, when it comes to tip passes, and he's made some plays in 7 shots. And I'm not going to go out here and say Devin Bush is having a bad training camp. He's not having a bad training camp, but he's in a battle. He's not having a great training camp. He's not having the training camp where it's like, oh, he's going to turn it on now. I don't think we can. The thing with Devin is there's no excuses anymore. This is year 4, and we're like 2 weeks into camp. So if Devin Bush is ever going to be the Devin Bush we imagine him to be, the signs have to start to be there. They're not there, right? The fact that he's in a position battle with Robert Spillane tells you everything you need to know about Devin. I mean, this is Devin's last year in Pittsburgh, regardless of if he wins this battle or not. I just don't see him becoming the kind of player the Steelers drafted him to be. Certainly not the kind of player that's going to deserve a second contract from Pittsburgh. So that's where we are at the linebacker position. Depth here, I think Mark Robinson and Buddy Johnson are probably the best of the rest of those two. And depending on, obviously UG3 makes this easier, because UG3 getting cut, means that it's just Marcus Allen in competition here. Allen's a vet, but I think Buddy Johnson has showed up enough, and Buddy Johnson as well, that as long as they don't screw things up in preseason, I could see those two being the two the Steelers choose to back up and be the 5, essentially the 5 that the Steelers keep, if they end up keeping 5, which I think they will. All right, at cornerback. There's not a whole lot to say here. I think the best corner the Steelers have right now is Ahkello Witherspoon, which maybe some people think that's a shock because they think it's going to be Cam Sutton. Not say Cam's not been bad, but when Ahkello Witherspoon, you look at what he did at the end of last season. The hope was like if he can be even close to that in this camp or into this season, the Steelers got, they got themselves a diamond in the rough there. And I think they might have. Look, I'm not saying that Ahkello Witherspoon's a shutdown corner like he was at the end of last season. I don't think he's that guy anymore. but I do think he's a starting caliber player, no doubt about it. I think beyond Akilo, the real storyline of camp, I think from this point forward, is going to be, now that Levi Wallace is back, can he do enough to prove to this team that he can be a solid outside corner in those nickel situations, right? You remember last season, the Steelers really had a problem here because they wanted to move Cam Sutton into the slot, especially in those dime situations, but they would have to bring out guys like James Pierre. Now, I like James a lot, but James last year, as the season went on, he just got worse and worse to the point where, Justin Layne was playing in his place by the end of last season. And the Steelers really couldn't trust any of those guys, right? I mean, it was a big weakness on this team, was that, kind of the third corner on the roster. You had Joe Hayden, you had Cam Sutton, and then Arthur Mollett in the nickel. Where I guess Trey Norwood played there a little bit as well. I think this season, I think what the Steelers probably want to do when it comes to those particular situations, when it comes to those nickel situations where they got a slot defender out there, I think they want that to be Cam Sutton, but they need Levi Wallace to prove that he can be a dependable outside receiver, more dependable than what we saw from James Pierre a year ago. It's too early to tell thus far. Levi was out with an injury, with a sickness. He had an illness for the first week or so of camp, so he's just coming back now. He got beat up by George Pickens today, but who doesn't? I thought he made a good play on the ball. I mean, he played that ball as good as you could in the end zone in the fade route. Pickens just made the spectacular play. But I think that's where we are at the cornerback position. Akil Witherspoon is going to be a starting outside corner. There is no question in my mind about that. And Cam Sutton will likely be the starting outside corner in base. The question comes in nickel. It's between Mollett and it's between Sutton, but I don't know that it's between Mollett and Sutton. Again, I think this is more a battle between Levi Wallace. And I guess you know what? I have a brand, and that brand is that I am the leader of the James Pierre hype train, and I'll start it back up again because James Pierre has had 2 pretty damn good days of practice. As I said at the beginning, he had a diving interception against Kenny yesterday. Great play. I thought he had some of his best days in these last couple days, and I think it's nice to see. As once again, you're gonna warm up to it, but as we get into camp, you want to start to see guys playing their best ball, and certainly James Pierre is doing that. The problem for James last year was, a couple things. I think the problem for him is he got in his own head a lot of the time, and that it was one of those, like, it just kind of got worse and worse for him, right? The shit rolled downhill for James, but he didn't play the ball well enough in the air a lot of the time. Again, he had that diving interception yesterday. I don't want to one play sample size it, but I think it's if he's going to try and beat, I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to say that there's going to be a battle between Levi Wallace and James Pierre, but if he can continue making plays like that, if he can continue to play the ball well in the air, I think he maybe could make it a battle between him and Levi. Certainly the battle to this point has been between James Pierre and Justin Layne. And both guys have played well enough. I mean, Justin Layne has been just fine in this camp, to where I think there is no battle at corner right now. I think no, you know what? Because I just had the thought, right? Arthur Mollett exists, and you can't rule out the fact that they feel like they have to play him at nickel. And so there's a numbers game the Steelers have to play at corner right now, because let's say they keep 6, right? So let's say they keep 6. Well, we know Cam's 1. We know Akilo's 1. We know Levi's 1. Okay, now in this case, it's going to be Mollett. So then it's Pierre and Layne. Okay, so simple math, just not my strong suit, guys. But if they keep 5, if they only kept 5, obviously they would have to choose then between Pierre and Justin Layne. Otherwise, if they keep 6, which I think they will, because neither guy in Pierre and Layne is doing anything to say we need to get rid of this guy. And both, I think, provide value both on special teams and that ability to kind of come in a pinch and play on the outside. Once again, another room like wide receiver, where I don't think it's a top heavy room. I know everyone worries about who's corner 1. Who cares who corner 1 is? The Steelers don't even travel anyway. It's not like Joe Hayden was out there every rep last year against Jamar Chase, right? I mean, the Steelers don't have a CB1. They don't travel. It's not like they're sending their best corner against the best receiver every play. But this is a it's a bottom heavy group. If you can, is that a thing? Can you be bottom heavy at a position? They're deep. They're really deep at corner. All right. Safeties. Well, how do you spell safeties? I think I misspelled the word. It doesn't matter. Minka Fitzpatrick's back. Minka Fitzpatrick making his presence felt out there for sure. He would have been maybe thrown out of the league for the hit he tried to put on. I think it was Gunner, or maybe it was Cody White. I forget who it was, but regardless, there were no pads today, so that he couldn't actually hit him. But if he did, I mean, if Minka went through with the hit, it looked like he was going to do. I mean, this is like you're talking about the old James Harrison type hits, where it's like, yep, throw his ass out the league. That's how the NFL treats these days. So yeah, Minka certainly making his presence felt out there. Edmonds, I think, is having a fine camp. It's just this whole again. Once again, I'll go back to something I said. For those of you who haven't listened to the last couple shows I did, this defense has been so good. I don't have anything bad to say about any player out there. I mean, again, even Devin and Robert. As I said, neither guys are having bad camps. I just think it's disappointing for Devin that he's in a battle with Robert Spillane, considering where he was drafted and what the expectations were of him. But this defense is dominant every single day. The story for me over the past 2 days. So yesterday, the offense won 7 shots. They won 5-2. I believe it should have been 6-1. I think there was a drop pass in there. So it should have been a 6-1. I mean, it should have been a big offensive win. The best win the offense has had all camp long. And boy, did the offense let him hear it. So the defense the defense has been chirping all camp. I mean, they talk during the play, after the play. They let the offense hear it. The bad snap or interception or any tip pass. I mean, they're going nuts on every play that they make because this defense knows how good it is. They have the swag and they know they're better than this offense, and they're going to let them know every single play how much better they are. And so the offense finally pushed back. I think it was a couple days into camp. It was the day there was like 4 fights that day. The offense finally pushed back. Well, then when the offense won 7 shots yesterday, they did the defense's new celebration, where they throw the ball up in the air and they shoot it up. Bang. The offense did that to the defense in their face. And they were, the offense let the defense hear it. Well, the defense came back out today. And from the word go, you could tell we're going to dominate this drill today. There's no let up today. I thought yesterday's practice, by the way, last practice in pads before the game, I thought, it was the first one they moved to 10:30. I did think it was a little low energy. I think Tomlin knew that too. I think Tomlin kind of stopped the 7 shots drill, I think a couple plays in and started getting on them about, this is a live drill. I want to see some action. And that kind of continued throughout. I thought yesterday's practice was a weird one as far as like, it's just not being as lively as we'd seen in days prior. Maybe it's because of all the, they're traveling back from Pittsburgh and back, Latrobe and back to the high school stadium, and then they were moving this one. Who knows? But regardless, so anyway, the defense came out today with a real intensity, and they dominated 7 shots. It's once again the thing about Trubisky, right? Because I think Kaboli wrote today that, Trubisky had an awful day, and especially 7 shots, awful throws. I mean, yes, but only because there was no one open. And it's 7 shots. You're not just going to throw the ball away, right? I think in a real game, hopefully Mitch would have thrown some of those balls away. Just like, well, that's a dead play and just wasn't there. I mean, there was one play where it was like a roll to the right. It trips right, and Mitch is rolling to the right. The defense, as soon as the play starts and Mitch starts rolling to the right, the sideline starts yelling, "It's not there!" They could just tell immediately what the play was going to be. They had it all covered, and I think Mitch tried to throw up a desperation ball in the corner of the end zone, easily incomplete. Man, this defense is good, and they know they're good. They really do. And to talk about the safety room, obviously Minka's been Minka. As I said, Edmonds, while he's not making spectacular plays up there, we know who he is. He's not going to make those spectacular plays, but he's a cog in the wheel, and that's all this defense really needs of him right now. They have the playmaker in Minka Fitzpatrick. Behind him, once again, I think that there's an interesting battle brewing. I would be surprised if Carl Joseph makes this roster. But he's getting some looks out there, and he's making the most of them. The problem for him is that with Minka out, Devontae Casey came in and played really good football for those week and a half or whatever it was until Minka played. And so Casey is an absolute lock to make the roster, as I think is Trey Norwood. And then Miles Killebrew is a really good special teamer. So, Carl Joseph's going to have to do a lot to make this roster. But, again, the more positions the Steelers can have like this, where there's legitimate battles, and it's, as I talked about the quarterback battle, you don't want them to pick someone by default, right? You want them to pick someone because they earned the spot on the roster, and it makes this team deeper. The more that they can get those positions, and I think safety is another one where at the back end of that, look, I don't love Miles Killebrew as a safety. I think they really only have three like starter caliber players, but that's more than you could say years ago. You wouldn't say a year ago that the Steelers had 3 starter caliber safeties. They do this year with Devontae Casey, who's been very, very good. All right. So that'll wrap it up for my position battle. We're an hour in, but I'm not going to stop. I see there are 40 of you watching live. I appreciate that. If you guys have any questions or anything, hit me up in the comments, and I will answer them here. So just so make sure you ask it in here. Let's get to here. We got Nick in chat who says that George Pickens is the most hyped wide receiver since Plexico Burress. It's hard because, like Kaboli said, you don't want to build up the hype for a guy so much because it is just training camp, right? It is, at the end of the day, it is just practice, right? The old Allen Iverson thing. What are we talking about? We're talking about practice. But I think Kaboli has a point, right? When he's, that the line he had on McAfee's show today was so perfect when he said, if he's not good, like, I'll be shocked. And I'm right there with him. Again, I go to the idea of, like, what's the point of training camp if you have players like Pickens, who is as spectacular as he is, and none of that translates to the regular season? Like, how's that possible? So, and not to say that it's not possible. I mean, we saw this with James Washington, right? James Washington in his rookie season was making 50, he made every 50-50 ball, right? Now, maybe he just, he had a really good flip of the coin that training camp. That really wasn't who he was at the pro level. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I guarantee that George Pickens is a great receiver, but I think, my goodness. Nick here again says, what other NFL offense has more weapons on paper? Well, I mean, straight up, I would just argue that the Bengals do. When you talk about Joe Mixon versus Najee Harris, I don't, as much as we all love Najee, I don't even know that I would put Najee above Joe Mixon right now. I think that there's certainly the potential there for Najee to be a better player. I don't know if he's a better player right now. I think quarterback, obviously Joe Burrow is better. And then that wide receiver room is as good as they are in the National Football League. So, I don't even have to leave the AFC North to tell you who a better NFL offense is on paper. I get the point, though. We talk about, like, this on paper. Okay, let's back this whole thing up again. In 2021, this Steelers team might not be good, right? I mean, I could certainly envision a scenario where this team wins like 5 or 6 games this year. Certainly. I mean, I think that the problems that they're going to have on the offensive line and at quarterback are, like, that's the death knell of a team. Doesn't matter what else you do. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offensive line, it's going to be really, really hard. I know the Steelers have threaded that needle in the past when you go back to what they did with Mason and Duck and with Ben. But what they did in those seasons was they won a lot of games late, and they won a lot of one-score games, and generally that reverts to the mean. But okay, so forget about 2022, right? Forget about 2022. Who cares what they do this year? This point here is why I think you should be excited about this team, even if it isn't this season. It's for, like, the next 5 years, because on paper, if they ever did, if the Steelers nailed the Kenny Pickett pick, forget about 22, 23, 24, 25. I mean, Kenny Pickett's going to be here for 10 years, right? If they, I think we're all pretty sure they nailed the Najee thing. They just re-signed Deontay. As I talked about, I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about George Pickens. And if they ever figured this offensive line out, yeah, we are talking about a really damn good offense. Whether or not they're the best offense in the league, I don't care. They're going to be a really, really good offense for a while if they figure out quarterback and they figure out the offensive line. But those are two things that will hold all that back, right? Najee Harris can't run if there are no lanes for him to run through. And Pickens, Austin, Deontay, Claypool can't make plays. They don't have a quarterback who can get him the football. So that's why I say, let's hold off a minute on, like, building up this offense to be, it's already going to be one of the best in the league. It has certainly the potential over the next coming years to be one of the best in the league. And 22, I'm gonna cautiously, pump the brakes on that one a little bit. All right, 007 comes in with a question I knew was going to get asked. I appreciate you asking it. Roquan Smith, yes or no? I would love if this team added Roquan Smith, because as much, there's a battle between Robert Spillane and Devin Bush. But if you added Roquan, you got 2 of the best linebackers in the league to go alongside TJ and Minka and all that. I don't think it's realistic. I don't know how much the Bears are going to ask for. I don't even know that. I mean, he's asked for a trade. That doesn't mean the Bears are actually going to entertain it. And I don't know how much it's going to cost. Are the Steelers going to trade a first-round pick for Roquan Smith right now? I doubt it. Especially considering what they're going to have to pay him at the position, and considering that they've already paid. They've already put so much into this defense. but at the end of the day, like this team doesn't have to pay a quarterback for 5 years. So you know, like I'm not going to rule this out because they don't have to pay a quarterback for a while. When you don't have to pay for a quarterback for a while, you can do things like, yeah, let's just trade for an inside linebacker. Like screw it. Let's make a great defense even better. Why not? So I wouldn't rule that out. Okay. JC here asks, is Hamilcar Rashad any good? I haven't seen him out there yet. I know he comes from the Jets, where he got waived. I mean, look, he got waived from the Jets. Not a great start. Not a great start. It's like, was Avery Williamson any good? He got waived by the Jets. Let's see where he got him an inside linebacker, we'll see what he does. Again, change of scenery can matter. Certainly it has mattered for a guy like Miles Jack. I'm not going to write off Hamilcar Rashad. He's coming into a room, though, at the edge rusher position where there is kind of an entrenched battle going on between Tuska and Delonte Scott. I'd like to see where he gets his reps, like who he takes these reps from. Because again, he's coming in, I believe, as an edge rusher, taking the place of a linebacker. How does he get those reps? What is Bush missing in your opinion? Well, I think the problem for him is that why did the Steelers draft him? They drafted him because they wanted to be like the Ryan Shazier replacement, right? They kind of fly around there a million miles an hour and make plays and be a disruptor. And he is not that. Like at the end of the day, look, if you're competing with Robert Spillane, it's because you're competing with an average linebacker in this league. And I think that's the problem for Devin is I think there's some athleticism concerns. Certainly he never came back. He never came back right from that ACL. The instincts just aren't there. And especially in the passing game, I think he's just always a step late, and I think what happened for him is that the light bulb never came on for him. And then his athleticism took a hit. And that's like the death knell for Devin. Because, in the running game, people get on him for the running game stuff. Like, I mean, he's an undersized linebacker. Right? I mean, I've said this 1,000 times, but they didn't draft him to like take on a guard in the hole. They just didn't do that. That's not why they drafted him. I mean, I think that they drafted him to be kind of a more, kind of disruptor type. He ain't that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Devin Bush isn't going to work out. So, all right, let's see here. Should have drafted McDuffie in the first, Joe Hayden with speed. I'm not worried about this corner room. I really am not. I really am not. As I said, we know Cam Sutton is a quality player. Again, look, the Steelers don't have Darrelle Revis. They don't have shut down guys out there. They're going to have to win. They're going to have to win because the pass rush gets there. Minka keeps a lid on things, and these guys are solid corners, right? I mean, they're not. You're not going to shut Jamar Chase down for 3 catches in that opener, but if they can limit him to 6 catches, 60 yards, like that's a pretty good. Again, that they'll be just fine if they can do that, right? I mean, they can limit it to even 6 catches, 80. I think they'll be okay doing that. I'm not too worried about this corner room. I think yes, this team is eventually going to have to take a corner, and they're going to have to do it early because Cam Sutton's in a contract year once again. And I think also so is Layne and so is Pierre too, right? So it's like, this is not the same room we're going to see a year from now, but I'm not worried about this room right now. And yes, I did spell safeties wrong. Confirmed. Todd says, are you worried about a Pickens re-injury? Not really. No. I'm worried about, obviously, freak injuries can happen at any point. But I think he's built in such a way, you look at him in the physicality that he brings to the position. I mean, his ability to kind of contort his body, he's just such a natural athlete. It was a pity that he went down with that ACL, but he seems to come back from it just fine. So I am not at all worried about specifically like a re-injury of like if that ACL is, he's made so many spectacular plays where he had to come down awkwardly and whatnot. Like, if that knee weren't stable, we probably would have known that already, just considering how good he's been. All right. So if anybody else has questions, leave them in chat here, just like 007 did. Who said Pickens scorched Cam Sutton again? Pickens scorched Levi Wallace, not Cam Sutton. Although, I mean, look, he has scorched everybody out there. So I don't want to say like he hasn't scorched Cam Sutton, but on the plays we're talking about today, the 2 spectacular plays that Pickens made down the sideline, it was Levi Wallace in coverage. Easy Pit says, said after the draft, George and Calvin are going to be studs for us. We should see if the Bears want Claypool in a second for Devin Bush and Devin Bush for Roquan. Trading Chase Claypool has been brought up before, and it is not the craziest thing I've ever heard. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I could actually, now that they've re-signed Deontay, I actually could see them trading Claypool a year from now, especially look, and this is, I mean, this is the way it has to happen, right? Which is that George Pickens is as advertised and Calvin Johnson is as well. And then I think that does make him expendable, but I don't know what you're going to get for Claypool. Like, what are you going to get? A 4th round pick for Claypool, 5th round pick for Claypool? Do you really, I mean, is a 4th round pick more valuable than just having Claypool on the roster? Like, you're not going to trade Claypool for a first, right? Or anything close to that, because, you know, that's what super productive receivers go for. But in this case where George and Calvin are studs, well, then they were more productive than Claypool was this year, right? And so that gives you kind of 2 back-to-back years of Claypool being a little underwhelming. And so you're not going to get, you're just not going to get a bunch back for that. Nick says, who do you think our returner will be for kick and punt returns? CA3 or gunner? That is the question. You can't answer it in camp because they don't run the drills live. So, so the way that they do special teams in camp is it's all simulated and they don't actually do any hitting. Obviously, that's where this is why they're kind of phasing out kickoffs and all this stuff, is because that's where the majority of especially concussions come from. So they don't run these drills whatsoever in camp as far as live. They will run the drill, but no one actually hits anyone. So it's hard to get. This is going to be one in game. This is ones we're going to know in preseason. I think, my gut says gunner, just because the guy was so good a year ago. He was an all-pro returner, I believe. So I think you just have to give him the nod for now. But man, Calvin, the thing about Calvin is that he's not just straight line fast. He's fast even when he has to cut, even when he has to kind of make the kind of minor adjustments to get around guys here and there. It's not like he loses a bunch of speed doing that. And I think that's it's almost more important to be able to maintain your speed than it is to be fast. How often in the NFL are you just running one direction, especially when you talk about return guys like this, when you're coming around an end around, right? His ability to take that end around at full speed, turn the corner, and not lose a bunch of speed so that he can, just make the defenses pay. That's what's made him so impressive here at camp. And it's what's going to give him a decent shot of winning this battle. All right. Nick also here says, I haven't heard Claypool making many plays in training camp. No, you have not. And that is because Claypool has spent the majority of camp not practicing. He had the shoulder injury first. What was it? Elbow, shoulder? One of those two. And so that kept him out for a while. He came back. I think his first play back was a nice toe-tapping touchdown in the back of the end zone and 7 shots. But no, you haven't heard a lot of Claypool. And as I think back, I mean, the problem for Claypool is just he hasn't practiced a bunch. So that's problem number one. But Pickens has been, look, let's be real about the Chase Claypool thing. George Pickens is who Chase Claypool should be. The stuff we're talking about Pickens doing on a day-to-day basis, why can't Claypool be that guy? What's stopping Chase Claypool from being the kind of player that I'm watching George Pickens be day after day? It's not just that George Pickens has better, body control and that kind of thing, right? George Pickens is also making the tough catches over the middle, right? The tough catches in traffic where he's got to kind of be, short-handed with the ball over the middle, kind of pluck it out, going up against those 50-50 balls with the defenders. Why can't Claypool be that guy? That's who Claypool should be. That's always been my frustration with Claypool, is that he's not that guy. He has every bit of athletic talent to be that guy, and he just isn't. That's the problem for Claypool. And I know he's worked with Brandon Marshall this year. I hope Claypool comes out, especially as a slot receiver, where he's going to have more advantageous matchups against undersized corners. And I hope that he has a big year because of that role. It's a pity that you have a player of his size, of his athleticism, that has to be, kind of relegated to the slot. That's who Chase is right now. But maybe it's a good home for him, and maybe he makes a place there where the Steelers feel like they want to keep him around. And we're not talking about the whole they should trade him after a year. All right. Actually, I'm going to skip this one for a second because Nick said, he should be better than Martavis. Yeah, I mean, Claypool from a physical standpoint should be one of the most dominant receivers in the league. I mean, you just don't see guys of his size. Are we talking about like, what is he, 6'4", 230 and runs like a 4.39 or whatever it was? I mean, again, we've all seen it, the graphic where they put it up and, he's got his measurables line up almost identically to Calvin Johnson. Yeah, he should definitely be better than Martavis was. 007 here asks, were you happy with Deontay being re-signed, or do you think they should have let him go? No, I'm very, very happy. I'm thrilled that they kept him. The worry with Deontay for me was that they were going to overpay, right? You talk about the receivers in the league right now who are making like $30 million a year. And then as we started to watch the contracts come in for guys like AJ Brown and Deebo Samuel and AJ Brown, it's AJ Brown twice. It's AJ Brown, Deontay Samuel. There's a third guy. Regardless, these are guys in his class, right? These are guys who made, who kind of have made a name for themselves in that class as being, top players at their position. Deontay was, he was a tier below, and so the worry was you certainly can't afford as the Steelers to overpay for Deontay more than what Deebo got, more than what AJ Brown got. And we're talking about like in the high 20s, $27 million a year, something like that. No, can't do that. But then, the question was like, well, why would Deontay take less, right? Why would Deontay take, if the number came in at like 20, why would Deontay take that? Was my thought. What they end up getting is kind of the best of both worlds. They got a really team-friendly deal at $18 million a year. Yeah, they guaranteed a lot of it, but who cares? He's going to be on the air. He's going to be on the team for 2 years. We know that about him. And for him, he gets to re-enter back into free agency a couple of years from now. So he gets to, stay with the team. I honestly think what happened there, because if you haven't heard the story, it wasn't like, this was like a back and forth negotiation. The Steelers kind of caved and said, oh, fine, we'll give you the 18 mil with all this guaranteed. Omar Khan put the contract on the table and said, we're willing to give you 18 mil over, 36 mil, whatever it is, over 2 years with 27 of it guaranteed. That's what we want to give you. If you like that, let's get the practice in. If not, we'll see you in Cincinnati. And Deontay slept on it and then just took the deal. Days after. It wasn't like there was, this back and forth. He just took the deal. I honestly think what happened is he got bored. I think that really did play a part in it. Because Deontay, man, look, I think we'll criticize him for the drops and certainly when those drops happened and the big moments, right? It was down the stretch in that season back in 2020 when he started, when he got the real bad dropsies. And then last year it started in week 16, 17 of last year and continued into that playoff game. And so I think there's certainly a lot of concern there. But I think that for he's a competitor, man. Like the guy is still a competitor. Obviously he needs to get better in those situations. But you could tell here at camp, like he was itching to get on the field. He was not going to be happy if he had to sit out an entire training camp and never play a single down when they were in team drills. So hopefully that competitive fire now, he's got this contract underneath him. I mean, again, the guy was so good a year ago. He had like 170 targets or whatever it was. And I mean, yeah, he had bad drop problems at the end of last season. But if you take the season in totality, the drops were really not a problem. The problem for him is that they get clustered. It's like a mental thing for him. It's like this block that he gets where all of a sudden it just kind of, it's once, like I talked about with James, right? Where it's like it just rolls downhill for him. That's the real problem for him. I love the signing though. And I think the contract works for the Steelers perfectly, keeps him here, into Kenny's era. It's 2 more years after this year. So you're talking about, he will be playing when Kenny ends up becoming the starter. Which by the way, I think Kenny's going to be the starter sooner than later. I mean, I really do. Again, you go back to that progress that Kenny's been making. If that continues, look, I know Mitch is going to start the season because Tomlin wants a veteran, but I think at some point, if Kenny keeps improving, Tomlin's going to have to admit to himself, well, first of all, he's going to have to give Kenny first team reps. Then he's got to admit to himself, like, he's a rookie, but this guy deserves to start. I think that may start. That may happen. Maybe it's mid-season, but it's going to happen at some point this season. Nick says Connor Hayward sounds like they have a plan for him to get him on the field. What packages do you see him in? I think Connor Hayward is going to be one of those guys who because he's so flexible, because they can move him around and they feel good about him standing up as a maybe in the slot or whatnot, or maybe even out wide, because of he's way more of an athlete than you would think. Way more of an athlete than you would think. He is undersized for the tight end position. But I think what Canada's going to love about him is that they can move him around so much, right? Could he play fullback? He's played fullback a couple plays here and there. Steelers don't use the fullback a lot, but he's played fullback in camp thus far with Watt being out. He's played in line a little bit, even though I don't think that's his best role. But I think with Canada, when you think about all the motions and shifts, and by the way, there are going to be a lot of those this year, I think Canada's going to love that he can put him in all these positions. And while Connor may not be great in any of them, again, it just makes the defense's job a lot harder when you have a guy like Connor who can make play, he's capable of making plays out of all those spots. You send him on a little flare out as a fullback. Certainly as a slot receiver, they've worked him a lot in the goal line drills because he's got pretty tough hands. I think that they're going to like him a lot in those packages where Canada's going to want to do those exotic formations and then kind of move things down to something more traditional or move guys around and whatnot. I think that's where they're going to like him a lot is just his ability to be, as I said, like an X factor on that offense. All right. Well, looks like that's the last question of the night. Appreciate everybody who has joined us. Been doing this for an hour and a half, or almost an hour and a half at this point. So appreciate everybody who's joined today. I think, look, as I said, tomorrow is my last day at camp. I likely won't do another camp recap video like this until probably next week when we kind of wrap it all up, as I'll be back home. But I probably will do a 53-man roster prediction. I'll definitely be doing a recap of Saturday's game. I will probably be at Saturday's game. It's an hour drive back to Pittsburgh. I'm debating whether or not I want to do that drive and then drive back because I got a flight on Sunday. Anyway, that's all logistic stuff you don't care about. But certainly going to try to be more active here on the channel. Excited to talk to you guys throughout the season. It's going to be an interesting one. Again, this is a season of change for the Steelers, but as I said before, let's not get tunnel vision on 22, right? 22 might not be a great season for the Steelers, but I think what we're seeing in this training camp, especially on that offensive side, is that this team is loading up full of skill position talent. They have to fix the offensive line. They have to figure out a quarterback. They do those things. I mean, this team is going to be just fine as we go into the future. So thank you all for watching tonight. I will be back probably later this week with the 53-man roster prediction. Actually, I'm going to wait on that till after. So I'll be back next week with a breakdown of the preseason game right here on Steeler Country. Thanks for watching.